President Trump's trip to Asia. In a nutshell, the odds of a full-blown trade war have decreased, while the odds of a full-blown nuclear war may have just edged a tiny bit higher. President Trump is back at the White House tonight after a jam-packed six-day trip. And the dealmaker-in-chief says he did not come back empty-handed. Trump announced he struck a one-year trade truce with Chinese President Xi when they met in South Korea, their first face-to-face meeting in 6 years. The big takeaway, the U.S. will cut fentanyl-related tariffs on China by 10%. In exchange, China will crack down on the chemicals used to make fentanyl. And in good news for farmers, China also promised to resume buying billions of dollars worth of soybeans. But all the smiles and handshakes came on the heels of an ominous announcement the president put out on Truth Social just minutes before that high-stakes meeting. Trump ordered the resumption of nuclear weapons testing immediately. Here's what the president told reporters as he flew back to the U.S. on Air Force One.
About resuming nuclear testing, what prompted you to do that right before
Well, that had nothing to do with them. It had to do with others. They seem to all be nuclear testing.
Russia?
We have more nuclear weapons than anybody. We don't do testing. We've halted it many years ago. But with others doing testing, I think it's appropriate that we do also.
Now, according to the Arms Control Association, Russia actually has the biggest nuclear arsenal, 5,600 warheads, compared to 5,200 in the U.S. China has about 600. And it is unclear what Trump means by testing nuclear weapons. His comments come after Russia recently tested a nuclear-powered missile and a nuclear-powered torpedo drone launched from a submarine and capable of triggering a radioactive tsunami along the American coast. The Russians helpfully released an AI video showing how it would work. But none of those tests actually involved detonating nukes. The U.S., Russia, and China haven't gone that far since the 1990s. North Korea conducted the most recent nuclear detonation during Trump's first term in 2017. But even the North Koreans have announced a moratorium on such testing. Trump's nominee for the head of U.S. Strategic Command testified today before senators, and he walked back the idea that any of these tests would involve actual detonations.
In a test regimen, but I wouldn't presume that the president's words meant nuclear testing. I believe the quote was, "Start testing our nuclear weapons on an equal basis." Neither China or Russia has conducted a nuclear explosive test. So I'm not reading anything into it or reading anything out to it.
All right, let's get reaction now from our panel. Retired General Wesley Clark is the former Supreme Allied Commander of NATO, and Chris Cillizza is a NewsNation political contributor and senior advisor at DGA Group. Great to have both of you here. General, I'm going to start with a couple questions to you. Trump was asked where these tests would happen, and he said, quote, "It will be announced soon we have test sites." How would a nuclear test even happen right now?
Well, presumably, if you were going to really use a nuclear explosive, you'd have to bury it underground. So you've got to prepare the tunnel site. So it's several, maybe 1,000, 2,000 feet underground. You've got to go through a whole checklist of processes, reviews, areas of safety, et cetera, training of people. It's not going to happen overnight. 2-3 months would be extraordinary to do it that rapidly. And that's if you're going to do an underground test. Now, we haven't done any above-ground tests since the early 1960s because it scatters radioactive elements all over. I mean, you just wouldn't do that. But so I'm not sure that the president meant we were going to test nuclear explosives. I think people are misinterpreting what he said.
Yeah, well, he said we're going to do what the others are doing, which is testing nuclear weapons, but the other nations are not, in fact, actually exploding or detonating nuclear warheads. Nobody has done that.
Right. No, we test nuclear weapons all the time. When you fly a B-52 or a B-1 or a B-2 or in some cases an F-16 in Europe, that's a nuclear delivery vehicle. So they're tested all the time. When our submarines are underwater, they're carrying long-range missiles. That's a test constantly going on and check for that. We're just not exploding things. So I understand that the distinction here is that Russia has, they have a nuclear engine in
Right.
this cruise missile, and they have a nuclear propellant in the torpedo. And that means you could still have a radiation leak and a nuclear accident without ever having an explosive.
Oh, great.
That is dangerous.
Yeah, super dangerous. Chris, why do you think Trump posted this minutes before he walked into a room with Chinese President Xi?
Well, putting yourself in Donald Trump's brain is not a healthy. Like I don't know his motivation. I will say this though, Elizabeth. It's very rare that there are coincidences in politics and policy. It seems odd to me that Donald Trump would just randomly decide that a few minutes before meeting with the president of China, he would post this. I actually find it very reassuring to hear the general talk about his belief of what Donald Trump meant, or at least what military people within the Trump administration will determine and interpret what he meant. I do think it is important to remember, time after time after time, we think Donald Trump is playing six-dimensional chess. He's almost never playing six-dimensional chess. The truth of the matter is, my guess is he heard someone say Russia tested a nuclear device, and he thought, well, we're not going to be behind them on that, and he reacted. You know, I mean, now it's up to the sort of military folks and the national security folks to sort that out, and I hope their clear heads prevail, but I don't think he had a specific, okay, we're going to do this testing in this place in mind. He very rarely does that on anything.
Yeah, and by the way, the protests from the state of Nevada were undoubtedly, if it was going to happen, it would happen. The last underground test was in Nevada. It would be a huge outcry there. General, if as Chris is right, listen, regardless of what he meant by posting this warning and then speaking about it later when he was flying home, it sparked reaction. Russia has warned that it will start exploding nuclear devices as well if the U.S. does it. The Kremlin spokesman said today if the U.S. abandons the moratorium, Russia will act accordingly. China, for its part, called on the U.S. not to do this. So this definitely got the attention of both Russia and China.
Yes, and I think to answer Chris's point, I think when he was walking in to see President Xi and someone said something about the Russian nuclear torpedo, I think he said, you know, this is the right time to say it. I'm not going to go into
with the video that the Russian government helpfully released.
Yeah. So I think it's ricocheting around and being misinterpreted.
Okay, super quick, Chris. I do want to ask you very quickly about the victories that Trump scored on his meeting with the Chinese president. The big one being that China will suspend its limits on rare earth exports to the United States. This is huge. People don't realize it, but we use these rare earth minerals in everything from our cell phones to our cars to our dishwashers to our airplanes. We need them for literally everything.
And you're exactly right. And we in America do not have a ton of the rare earth minerals that produce batteries and all these things naturally. It's why, by the way, I would also note, Donald Trump's deal that he cut with Ukraine, which does have a lot of rare earth minerals. This was several months ago.
That was a big deal.
But to access them does matter, right? I mean, this powers the 21st century economy. There's no question about it. So yes, I would always say the devil is in the details with these things. General Clark knows this a whole heck of a lot better than I do. The devil is in the details. Donald Trump and Xi say, okay, we've got this deal. Now it is up to the sort of staff below that to figure out what it actually means.
Right.
But yes, I agree with you. In general, the U.S. needs more access to these rare earth minerals. China has it. It can't hurt us.
Thank you for watching. Subscribe below and download our NewsNation app right now on your phone, and you will get fact-based, unbiased news for all Americans.